Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into
It's no
it.
secret that a high-mileage car starts to experience quite a few problems, and many of them are related to the engine. This is not surprising. The wear of piston rings, valves, cylinders, and other parts leads to increased clearances, slag deposits accumulate, which leads to even greater wear. As a result, the engine consumes a lot of fuel and oil. There are difficulties with its start, and not only in frosts. And the power is no longer the same as it was. All this applies to any engine, regardless of the manufacturer. Sooner or later such problems appear even in the most reliable brands, the same Japanese. Part of the problem can be reduced by simply changing the oil to a different one, rather than repairing it. Many motorists know that a car with a high mileage gets a second wind after that, and will still run. Still, not everyone has the opportunity to buy a new car, and they have to use 10 to 20-year-old ones. What mileage is considered high? This is a very controversial question, since much depends on the specific model. For example, most European cars produced now have a relatively small resource, and they need to be replaced after 5 years. The mileage by then will be about 100,000 kilometers. But this is because the average European can't afford to change the car every 5 years. In Russian conditions, the car is likely to run much more during this period. Travel distances are much greater. Few people will change a not-so-old car, so the question arises again, what oil to use in a car with such mileage to extend the resource? For some Japanese models, a mileage of 100,000 to 300,000 kilometers can be considered great, although they can usually last longer. Some of them have twice as many miles on the speedometer. But even for the most reliable, there is a question, what oil to pour at a mileage of more than 200,000 kilometers? Where begins to show itself. And at the figure of 300,000, you should already think about buying another car. Most car owners know from experience that most cars start experiencing engine problems near the 100,000 kilometers mark. Therefore, the most pressing question is what oil to start pouring at this mileage. Oil viscosity for a motor with mileage. The older the engine, the better oil for it should be used. Many people, on the contrary, think that the motor is old anyway, and therefore the cheapest mineral oil will do. This is a big mistake, because it will quickly ruin the engine, and on a good synthetic or semi-synthetic it may well serve for more than 1 year. In any case, it will be cheaper than major repairs, and even more so the replacement of the internal combustion engine. Read also, tubeless tires, device, marking, advantages, how to distinguish. The car manual says which oils are best suited for it. And these recommendations should be adhered to while the car is relatively new. With age, they become not good enough. Consumption increases, oil seals leak, pressure does not hold. Therefore, engine oil for high-mileage engines should be of a different, higher quality, at least medium, but not low, and it should be either synthetic or semi-synthetic. When choosing, you should be guided not by the instructions, but by the characteristics of the oil itself and assess its suitability for specific components. The fact is that new generations of lubricants may not be suitable for older engines. For example, they may have reduced viscosity at high temperatures. Their use can only increase the wear of parts. Oil for cars with high mileage should be selected with the same characteristics as recommended, but with a different viscosity, and you need to take into account the season of the year. Thus, in summer it is better to switch to a product with a higher viscosity, and in winter with a lower viscosity. For example, usually motorists use 5W30 oil all year round, but the instructions allow the use of 5W40 and 10W40. Therefore, in summer it is better to use thicker 5W40 or even 10W40. They will better fill worn-out gaps and provide better lubrication. Besides, oil seals will stop leaking. But in winter, thick lubricant can create problems with starting the engine, and at this point just and the greatest wear of its parts. Therefore, winter oil should have a lower viscosity, for example, 5W30. It must be remembered that less viscous oils also form a thinner film, which means that friction remains high. In addition, such a thin film burns out and evaporates quickly, so the oil is quickly consumed and has to be added more often. On a hot engine, such oil becomes quite liquid. The quality of lubrication becomes even worse. It begins to leak not only through the oil seals, but also everywhere it can. And after all, the various gaskets are also old, and the gaps have become larger. Read also, brushes, wipes, sponges. Wash the car correctly therefore. On an old engine, you need to take into account the seasonality and change the oil to a more suitable one, more viscous in summer and more liquid in winter. Which oil for a high-mileage engine is better to choose? If you look at the range of lubricants, you can see that there are so many analogs on different bases and different viscosities. So it is not difficult to choose the right oil for a car with a high mileage. But it is necessary to strictly adhere to the manufacturer's recommendations and not to be amateurish. Engineers have long ago tested everything and wrote the instructions for a reason. As a rule, synthetic-based oil is recommended for high-mileage internal combustion engines. Synthetic oil is of higher quality than mineral oil, which is essentially refined petroleum. Synthetics are further improved and have additives that improve the quality of lubrication and prolong the life of parts. In addition, synthetics, unlike mineral oil, is weakly oxidized and forms much less soot. Synthetics, of course, and costs more expensive than mineral, but it is not necessary to save money. In extreme cases, you can use semi-synthetics if it gives a good result. But in any case, it should be a product of high or at least medium class, but not low. If the synthetic base was used from the beginning and recommended by the manufacturer, it is not necessary to change to something else. It is usually sufficient to increase the viscosity. Switching to a mineral base or even a semi-synthetic base can cause big problems. If mineral base was used initially and always, it is not a fact that changing to synthetic will improve engine performance, although it usually helps. It may be enough to change the viscosity as well. But remember that thicker oils of any type should be changed after 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers, but for mineral oils this interval is better to reduce to 4,000 kilometers. In conclusion, choosing the right oil for a high-mileage car is crucial for maintaining its performance and longevity. Look for oils specifically formulated for high-mileage vehicles, as they often contain additives that help reduce wear and tear, improve seal condition, and enhance overall engine health. Whether you opt for synthetic, conventional, or a blend, always refer to your owner's manual for the manufacturer's recommendations. By making an informed choice, you can ensure that your high-mileage car continues to run smoothly for many more miles to come. Thank you for watching, and drive safely.